Michael, this whole area of not being compatible with Freemasonry, I think also in the lodges they have what's called the volume of the sacred law, and in most or many lodges that could be the Bible, but I believe it can equally be any other religious book as well.
Yeah, that's right. It can be the Quran, and that's the problem I had with it. I've very recently been witnessing to my father about this, and he was talking about how that we all believe in the same God, and so therefore my argument to that was, well, if you have a Muslim who comes into the lodge, you would have to have the Holy Quran, as they call it, on the altar for them to witness their vows to, and so therefore you can have any volume of whatever as your volume of the sacred law, if you like. Yeah. So whether it be the Bible or anything else, everything from humanistic things to, I don't know what the Hindus' word is, but I know sort of from the Quran to everything else, you can, and that's the problem with it. And I just know that what my Bible says is, thou shalt have no other gods apart from me.
In the end, what is clear with Freemasonry is they would be of the impression that all roads lead to one God.
Yes.
And that God is the same God, so whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Muslim or whatever, that God is the same God.
Yeah.
And therefore you are to accept everybody's same God. But as Christians, and indeed by very definition, you take the definition that a Muslim has of God, that a Christian has of God, that a Jew has of God.
Yeah.
Whoever, and we're going to talk about a news cutting I picked up of a Mormon that's become leader of a lodge, a master of a lodge in Utah. All with different gods. You can't bring all those together and say there's no problem, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, this whole thing about the universalistic religion, it's so that all men can agree on one doctrine, and obviously that's the hope that everybody will eventually be saved. They talk about everybody ascending to the Grand Lodge, which is heaven reportedly, and you can get into heaven by works only. Well, that's not what the Bible says.
Is that taught, or is that an impression that's given that because you're a Freemason, because you're doing good works, which, let's be honest, I mean, many Masons do good works and do raise money for charity, etc. So let's not completely belittle that and think they're the worst thing.
Not all devils.
But is it taught, or is it an impression that's given that by doing those things you will arrive at the Grand Lodge above, which basically, as you say, is the Christian heaven? It's
taught because you're taught that through knowledge you will ascend into the Grand Lodge above, and through these works that you do, you will ascend into heaven, which again is not the heaven of the Bible. Because if that's a Muslim heaven, or if it's a Hindu heaven or whatever, then clearly that is not what the Bible says. No man can enter the kingdom unless through me. So and you can't talk about Jesus in a lodge. That's the thing. You can mention other religions and you can mention other sages. You can mention God, but you can't mention Jesus.
Right.
So how does that fit then? Because if you can't mention Jesus, the Son of God, then, but yet you can talk about Zoroaster, or you can talk about anybody else, then there's not a problem with that.
So you can talk about all these other so-called sages, people that, but you mustn't talk about Jesus, the one, of course, who said, "I am the way." And is that the reason? Because I mean, if Jesus is true, then there is only one way.
That's right.
Because he said, "I am the way." And therefore, I mean, I guess many Freemasons say, "Well, we don't want division." Surely it's because of this message that Jesus has, which is a very real message, a very specific message. They don't want that to be communicated because, well, people like you will leave if you come in to put him first.
Well, that's right, and many people from other religions would leave as well.
Yes.
So how can you have this? It's just causing disunity in the lodge, and that's part of the ceremonies of the lodge is that you can't talk about that, or you'll be asked to leave the lodge, and you have to retire from the lodge, settle your differences with the brother, and then come back in peace and harmony. Well, Jesus, when he came, he said, I didn't come here for harmony. Your family would be upset by things that you're going to say. And I'm sure that my father is very upset about some of the things that I'm saying today, because he's still in the craft.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what I knew was that night that I went back, I felt that I could not participate in that ceremony any longer, because if there'd been someone from another religion in there, it would block my path. It would block my path to prayer, fulfilling prayer, if you like.
Yes.
So
yes. How long was it after you made your commitment to come to Christ, before you left the lodge? What sort of time period are we talking about?
Well, it was 2 months. I went back after 2 months, and then I resigned after 4.
Right. So in that period of time, you were in the lodge and you were in the church. When you went to church, or on a Sunday, or other days of the week as well, why just leave it a Sunday? But when you went to the church, did you have a sense of the problems that were coming there? Were you sort of trying to hide the fact that you were still a Mason? Was it a problem to you in your worship of the Lord in the church meeting, or were you able to cope with that at the time?
I coped until I went back to the first meeting, but after that, because then I knew that I was going to resign, I actually didn't go back to any more Masonic meetings. Yeah. So it was another 2 months, so I didn't have a problem with it. Once I'd written that letter of resignation, I knew I was free. I knew I was completely free. Right. I had a lot of prayer over me to renounce what I was in, and I really felt completely free. And from that point on, my heart really is for worship. So, I want no blockage there when I start worshiping the Lord. So that blockage was then gone. You can't worship the Lord, I don't think, going into a Masonic temple and then coming out into church the next day, because it just... I really do believe there's a blockage there. Yes. Yeah.
And you can't be the same person in the lodge on a Saturday night as in the church on Sunday morning. You are living two different lives, aren't you? And you can't be the same person.
No, not at all.
This is one of the things that to me shows quite clearly that there are definite problems here, and we will develop that and to show that there are more than just the problems we're talking about here. But clearly you can't be the same person. You can't do the same things. You can't talk, as you say, about Jesus. And the whole centre that you want to have in church is Christ, is Jesus.
Yes,
and you want to worship him. You can't even mention him on a Saturday night in the lodge. And so you have a real dichotomy going on in your life, don't you?
You do. Feeling that there's so many men in there, I think, in Freemasonry, who I know go to church as well, crying out for something to do in the church. And I feel it's because they've lost their way in the church that they've gone to Freemasonry, because they've got this feeling of importance, I suppose. Yes. Because if they're involved in a ceremony in some kind of way, that gives them that kind of, importance again. Whereas maybe in the church they might just be sitting as a pew hugger, like I wanted to be, and not really doing anything. But if you're involved in worship in the Lord in church in its fullest sense, then you shouldn't need anything else. And that's what I feel about this, that, I'm not going to sit here and condemn people because they're in Freemasonry. That, as I said to you before, they're not all devils, and the vast majority of men, 40% of Masons go into any of the higher lodges. I know we're going to touch on that later, but the point I'm making is that, the vast majority of men there just go into it for something else to do, and I think they've lost their way in the church. And that's why they go into it. And, they get that comradeship, they get, sort of chatting with other guys, and unfortunately, all that does is separate you from your family, which is exactly what it did with me. And that's the problem, and I think that's where Satan works through this, that he divides families, because if you're going up the ladder in Freemasonry terms, then you are stepping out of the family home night after night after night after night, coming in drunk. Some people don't drink, but I did a lot, and and you're separated from your family. You can't do the things that you should be doing with your family. For me, I've missed certainly a lot of time with my son, being able to pray with him, to read the Bible with him, and things like that, and because I was out.